My name is Kim Morgan with Woodlands Online, and I'm here with Bob Leilich, who is running for the Woodlands Township Board of Directors, Position 1. Bob, thank you so much for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Thank you. So I guess, the first question is why are you doing this? What made you want to run for this position?
Well, that's a good question, and my wife often questions that, but I'm going to say personally, I think we need to improve the focus on issues in the Woodlands, between the Woodlands and the residents. And I think the board has drifted too much away from that. And I want to see us get back to business, what we should be doing. Also, I think there's a lack of communications between the board and the residents in the community. And I would like to promote stronger two-way communications. I've talked to a lot of people who can't even name a single director on the board and do not have any understanding at all what the board does. And some people say, well, that's a sign of good governance if you don't have to get upset. But I also think it's an opportunity to do even better governance. So, I think we have a good government, but I think we can do better, and that's why I'm running. And traffic and transportation. I've been a transportation consultant for almost my entire life. I've developed simulation software to used in capacity analysis, although it's in the railroads. It's been used around the world, but the same principles apply to road as they do railroads, just that a train is a much bigger object than a car. And in the last couple of years, I've learned a lot about new technologies in traffic control. I want to bring this to the Woodlands. And lastly, I want to contribute the experience that I have over the last 45 years, first as a manager in line management with the Santa Fe Railroad, and second as a consultant working with executives, CEOs, and chairmen of the board of private businesses. I've done a lot work with state and local and federal government. So I have all kinds of experience from small businesses to large corporations as well as government. And I want to contribute that experience. It's like a good piano player. When he retires, he doesn't quit playing the piano.
What do you think then is the number one issue that our residents are concerned about?
Well, whether it's a real issue or not, it's certainly bubbled to the surface, and I think that deals with incorporation. I think it is, to be very frank with you, an insane idea. And we need to take it slow. And the legislation which created the township is unique and gave it almost the same principles as an incorporated city has. And what we don't have, a lot of what we can do can be negotiated. And I don't think we've done enough in the negotiating area. Money can buy a lot of services. Incorporation is going to cost a lot of money just to get to incorporation before you can do the very few things that an incorporated city can do that a township can't do.
Is there any particular incident or issue that encouraged you to go ahead and run for this position?
I wouldn't say any single particular issue. I mean, I've given some thought about running several years ago, but was discouraged by my better half, bless her soul. And this time around, I've felt the same inclination. But when I talked to a variety of people, I was really encouraged to run and said, you'd be, the Woodlands can benefit from the experience that you've had in traffic and transportation and your experience in the consulting environment. Plus, as a mechanical engineer, I have a very good analytical background, and all my life I've been identifying problems, not the symptoms of a problem, and creating solutions to them. That's how I made a living for most of my 45 years. I've been involved in the community for the last 9 years, a year after I moved here. Currently president of Mud 1, and under my leadership in Mud 2, I led the charge and had a major role in consolidating Mud 2 and Mud 40, the first consolidation that has happened in the Woodlands, and I hope it's going to set a precedent for other muds to follow. I consider it highly successful, as does the rest of the people on my board. I've been director and treasurer of the Grogan's Mill Village Association for many years. I put in a new accounting system, which does a much better job of tracking restricted monies from the township versus unrestricted money that we get from the farmers market and we get from other sources. I've also put in budgeting procedures, which give a lot of order and discipline to the way we spend our money. I've been on the Residential Design Review Committee for many years and gotten elected every time I've run, and understand the issues that face the residents, and I've learned covenants and regulations. And one of my biggest concerns is the number of violations is increasing every single year as the Woodlands gets older.
How long have you been here in the Woodlands?
Been here 10 years, prompted to move here by 3 beautiful grandchildren. And now I managed to even get my daughter and her husband to move to the Woodlands. So our whole family is now here in the Woodlands.
The Woodlands slogan is live, work, and play. How do you think you can contribute to all of those factors?
Well, let's go into what's included in those 3 things. And I think it's expressed in George Mitchell's original vision of livability, sustainability, recreation, open spaces, mobility, and trees. And to a large extent, we've gotten away from a good bit of that. And particularly issues like mobility, open spaces, and recreation. That's all part of the things that I want to get into, which I think address the issues that you mentioned. And as we're nearing build out, we can turn our focus away from growth-related issues and catch up with growth. So I think Woodlands has grown faster than its financial ability to provide all the things that I talked about as part of the vision. But with growth slowing, and if we maybe control a little bit more on the type of businesses that come in to the Woodlands, we work on our transit issues, whether it's park and ride, which has been a decline in ridership in spite of the growth, and I don't know the reasons for that, but I want to find out. I'd like to see the ad hoc transportation committee be reinstituted. Why it was dissolved, to me, is a testament to the fact that the board is not spending enough time on transportation issues. The ad hoc transportation committee spent a lot of time, hours, focusing purely on transit and transportation related issues. I want to see that back. I want to be a part of it.
How does your expertise as an engineer benefit the community?
Well, 1 year ago, I had zero knowledge about flooding and drainage issues. I have become a very fast study in the last 6 months as a result of the Tax Day flood and the Memorial Day flood that we have. And as the president of Mud 1, I have become particularly involved. And I have personally walked every foot of every drainage ditch in the former Mud 2. I'm going to do the same thing in the old Mud 40 come this October, but this time I'm bringing the experts from the Woodlands Joint Powers Agency to go along with us. Because it's one thing to identify problems, which we did. We identified a lot of problems. But it's another thing to find solutions. So the WJPA, at our request, Mud 1's request, did some studies of some very particular areas in the old Mud 40 where there were serious problems. And we have taken an initiative. We're the first mud in all of the Woodlands to authorize an expenditure to make some drainage improvements. And that's just the beginning. I don't think we'll ever be able to solve all the problems because you can't build a drainage system to have a 500-year flood, because then you couldn't afford the homes. But if it only happens once every 500 years, that's one thing. But I think the recent experiences that we've had, and perhaps a change in the climate in the future, means that we need to do more. So I want to lead the drainage task force that will be open when Jeff Long retires, and everyone knows that.
In your experience, are people for or against incorporation?
Well, I think most people, when they hear the dollar signs involved, don't go beyond that and are against it solely for that reason. And it goes back to people are basically happy with the way the woodland is being run. And the old axiom, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, I think applies in this situation. The primary purpose of incorporating is to prevent annexation. And it is my belief that it's going to be very difficult for Houston to want to annex the Woodlands, because first of all, they have to annex all the property leading up to the Woodlands. And second of all, they're going to take on a community that demands a lot of attention. And are they going to give it to us? They may not be prepared to give it to us. There's just simply no valid reason, economic or otherwise, to incorporate at this time.
In 5 years from now, where do you want to see the Woodlands?
I would still prefer to see it as a township. And I think I mentioned earlier, starting to catch up on some of the amenities and some of the issues where we have drifted away a bit from George Mitchell's vision. We're so busy working and dealing with growth that we haven't reached maturity as a township. And I think within 5 years we will achieve maturity. And with that, we can better stabilize the problems that are growing. So I think we can see a smoothing out and hitting the problem areas and treating those. But most of all, we've got to preserve what we have right now, everything from trees to open spaces to recreation facilities, etc.
In George Mitchell's vision.
And in George Mitchell's vision.
Do you have anything else you would like to add?
Well, just a little bit about my background.
Yes.
I do have a degree in mechanical engineering, and the only engineer on the board, Jeff Long, is retiring. So Jeff and I are good friends, and so I want to replace him with the analytical minds that engineers get in their education. I have a degree in industrial management, a master's degree. I have additional postgraduate work in transportation economics. So I've got a strong educational background, and I knew what I wanted to do when I was 6 years old. I already had it all mapped out. I've been and worked for large corporations. I've had military experience. I've worked for 2 international consulting firms, one of which was also an accounting firm. I had my own small business for 20 years, had 2 small businesses for 20 years. So I understand business, both large and small. I understand people. And owning your own business, if you can't work with people, you're not going to be successful in your business. And I've learned financial management. And I've been paid a lot of money to work with senior executives of large and small companies to identify and solve problems. And I just want to emphasize my background and experience as a professional that I can bring to the township board.
What would you say then to encourage folks to, number one, come out and vote, and number two, come out and vote for you?
Well, I think there are a lot of issues there. One is a lot of people are going to vote because of the presidential election. But the difficult thing is to get people to vote what's called down ballot. Just don't pull the lever for a party, but go down the ballot. There'll be a lot of other things on the ballot that people should vote for. And if enough people begin to identify with those of us who are running on the township board and can relate to them, I'm hoping that they will vote, and in my particular case, vote for me.